Welcome to the Biotech Startups podcast by Exceeder. Join us as we speak with first-time founders, serial entrepreneurs, and experienced investors about the challenges and triumphs of running a biotech startup, from pre-seed to IPO, with your host, Jon Chee. Our guest today is Sergey Jakimov, founding partner of LongeVC, a venture capital fund backing early-stage biotech and longevity-focused founders. A serial entrepreneur, Sergey has co-founded 3 deep tech ventures and raised more than $50 million in funding. He also partnered with early-stage therapeutics companies on fundraising, IP protection, and clinical trial strategies, particularly in cardiovascular, oncology, and neurodegenerative disease. Beyond venture, he co-founded LongeVC, a medical tech company unlocking the value of biomedical data to accelerate drug discovery, and the Longevity Science Foundation, a non-profit advancing research to extend healthy human lifespan. From startups and venture creation to global efforts in longevity, Sergey's path reflects both entrepreneurial grit and a deep commitment to changing how we think about aging and disease, making this a conversation you won't want to miss. Over the next 4 episodes, Sergey shares how a mix of curiosity, resilience, and practical thinking carried him from his early years in Latvia to building startups and investing in longevity. He reflects on lessons from entrepreneurship and venture building, the transition from founder to investor, and why evidence-based innovation and patient outcomes-driven investing are key to advancing human health and longevity. Today, we'll hear about Sergey's roots in post-Soviet Latvia, where without computers, phones, or video games available, he spent most of his time outside or reading countless books from the library. We'll also hear about his years training under a retired national tennis coach, finishing school early, and the weekly 4-hour bus rides he took to Riga to secure his university spot, where he juggled a grueling workload with translation gigs and coaching to get by. Lastly, we'll follow his path from a disillusioning Parliament internship to a scholarship at Central European University in Budapest, where he focused on political economy and quantitative research. Without further ado, let's dive into part 1 of our conversation with Sergey Jakimov.
Sergey, good to see you again. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jon.
Really looking forward to this conversation. I know it's been a while kind of to the run-up of this, but, now that we're finally here, I'd love the opportunity to really just, learn about you and kind of go all the way back to what got you into business, science, and investing, frankly. So take us all the way back. I know before we hit record, you said you had visited your mother this past weekend, back in your hometown. So take us back to your hometown. What was it like growing up?
Well, that's you start with a hard one. To be completely honest with you, so it's a complicated question. It's going to have a complicated answer. I think I was pretty happy growing up. To be honest, with you. So look, the story starts with the fact that as we speak, I'm now in Riga in Latvia, right? And so Latvia is where I was born and I was raised, and this is where my family still lives. I do travel now quite extensively, as you might imagine, but this is still the home base and the home, pretty much. So I was born in Riga, but my parents were living in this very small, by U.S. standards, that would be a village. By Latvian standards, that would be like a rural town sort of thing, which is by accident also the oldest town in Latvia. Which is in the eastern part, sort of 30 kilometers ish from the Russian border, on the right side of the country. So I was born in Riga and was immediately taken there, and this is where I spent 17 years of my life. So I grew up there. I graduated school there in Latvia. It's 12 years. I actually finished school faster. I finished it in 11 years. But yeah, I don't know how much you know about the post-Soviet reality
Tell me about it.
of and growing up in post-Soviet reality. I mean, I think it's much better to like watch a documentary on it or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't be able
To do it justice.
to do to do it justice and to talk on all the colors,
Yeah.
so to say. But it was I mean, it was definitely not rich financially. Right. I can't say I'm coming from like a poor family or something like that. That would not be fair to say. But I think we didn't have anything excessive. I would call it that way. So it was definitely not materially excessive childhood and upbringing. But at the same time, it was a very social one in terms of how we basically entertain ourselves, and we did entertain ourselves. We arguably were the last generation of already post-Soviet kids. That would normally like be the story of a slightly older individual from the space or a Soviet kid, but we were like the last generation of already post-Soviet kids because I was born in 1992, which was right after Latvia got independence and the Soviet Union collapsed, and we were basically growing up outside. So we were, as you might imagine, no phones, no computer games. Even when the first consoles appeared and kind of the first Nintendos appeared, that was absolutely way out of our financial and technological reach.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can
yeah.
tell you.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I got my first PC when I was gosh, 13 maybe or 14 years old. And I got my first mobile phone roughly somewhere there. So we did grow up with no tech gadgets or anything. So yeah, every single social experience multiplied by the fact that it was a period historically, it was a period of um I wouldn't say anarchy, but it was very dodgy on the social level in terms of law enforcement, in terms of how people were, I think, reimagining and rediscovering their identities after the Soviet Union collapsed, in terms of how people were seeking new employment, new means of providing for their families, and things like that. And that obviously also resonated with how you grow up. So I literally went to a village school, and yeah, and a village school, man. I mean, it's like a so if you it's like a Navy SEAL course with the classrooms, right? So you basically it basically teaches you to survive at in any situation, in any sort of argument that you might encounter. That argument, mind you, is normally with an amount of people which is with an n of more than one, right? So you're you're usually on the lesser side
Yeah.
of that argument, at least amount wise, in terms of the allies. So it teaches you diplomacy apart from like basic math and whatever skills teaches school. It teaches you diplomacy. It teaches you pretty I think pretty good social flexibility in terms of how to get yourself out of the situations which seem to be fairly dead endish for you. And that's about that. I mean, I did play interestingly enough, and that's always something which is absolutely not obvious about me. So I ended up actually playing tennis for
Cool.
my whole childhood, and that this is where I spent quite a lot of my time. Actually, I spent it on the tennis court. This is how I, by the way, so in the beginning of 90s, like growing up in the beginning of 90s, with all these kind of, street gangs that were forming from, kids pretty much already. You kind of had two choices. You either go that route and try to integrate in that with this part of um social expression of people, right? Or you dig yourself into studies and sports. That makes you tremendously unpopular. right? But
Got it.
you kind of need to make you as dumb as it sounds. I mean, when you were a kid, you really need to make this very early. Need to make this decision about like what you want to do, and I honestly wanted to leave. So I always understood that like this is not the future for me. I love the place where I grew up, but I love to visit it, right? I wouldn't really want to live there. So I decided I'm gonna dig into the books and then spend most of my time, at the tennis court. And back in the days, interestingly enough, I was 6 years old, and my mom, she didn't know where to sort of put me in terms of sports. And I was very bad at martial arts. She tried to get me into the martial arts part. I was very bad at it. So I basically tried to do conflict resolution via diplomacy, not by hitting someone. I didn't really see much use in that, to be honest. So it didn't resonate. And essentially one of the coaches for the national team of Latvia, he was from the nearby village originally, and he got old, and he was playing during the Soviet times and whatever. So he was basically a retired pro tennis coach. He got old, and he retired in that village where he was from. And at some point he got bored and he started a group with school with kids, not even school kids, but like I was 6 years old, so like first grade at
That's
school.
early.
And yeah, and it was like the least obvious thing and the least obvious place where a tennis group could have been started, honestly, in 1990 whatever 8, in Latvia, in Ludza, my hometown. So I ended up being there, and I ended up pretty much playing tennis for my whole life after which and I did reach a fairly good level. I would say I never progressed into trying to become a pro or something because I eventually chose education. It was never a goal, but it was always like a great support for me going through the childhood and kind of the early youngster days. Yeah, it also worked tremendously well as my first kind of side gig when I left my hometown. I went to Riga for my bachelor's. I was 17 years old, and I worked worked when I had a chance as a coach. So or as like a sparring partner. That was my first side gig that actually helped me to earn some money back in the day. So tennis helped. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, Latvia does the full school cycle is 12 years. I did it in 11, so I skipped one grade, and I actually went to school when I was 6 instead of going when I was 7. So I ended up graduating 12th grade at the age of 17, or normally kids would do it at, well, kids, quote unquote. I mean, they love 18, 19 years old. It's not really a kid anymore, is it?
Yeah.
But like young adults
Yeah.
would do it at the age of 18, 19. So that was it. I basically just prioritized studies and whatever sports I could do, and was digging through it.
I mean, that's amazing that a kind of like a professional tennis player just so happened to be like nearby and and you're just like, oh, this is just a great opportunity. I mean, I can't imagine the training was easy either. You're probably
You know
like
what?
getting whipped into
We
shape.
used to. So when I started as a kid, we didn't really have any facilities to actually play tennis, and because you need tennis courts and whatever. And whenever I say tennis court, you imagine something a normal person would imagine, which is a clay court or a hard court or whatever it is, right? But some sort of a facility. We really didn't have those, so I remember when I was a kid, we started playing on concrete court, so it was basically a concrete pitch with the lines that were drawn um, with some paint and a brush
Yeah.
to resemble the size of the court, and then you had two poles and then the net, and that was it. That was our outdoor court, and we had some sort of a similar construct inside in an old Soviet stadium, like closed hangar type of thing, where people were usually running. but we had the same pitch drawn there, and this is how I got into tennis back in the days as a kid, starting six. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you that. So whenever, like, if you actually learn this thing on like an asphalt concrete pitch, whenever you end up on a proper court, it's a breeze for you. Like
Yeah,
it's an
yeah.
absolute breeze.
You're playing on a hard mode.
You almost don't understand like what should you do here, because it's so much easier, it's so much slower. So it turned out to be a pretty good advantage whenever I actually reached the normal train facilities. Yeah, but
I love that.
that was it.
You're playing. I mean,
Otherwise, any
like
any
playing
any
on hard mode.
post-Soviet any post-Soviet kid you ask, like my age, and I'm 33 right now. So someone who grew up in the 90s in the post-Soviet space, especially not in the big city, but somewhere like out in the village, they'll tell you the same story. Like summer, you're on a bicycle 95% of your time, or you're outside with like a football ball or something, whatever you had. And honestly, like having a football ball was like great. It was an asset. Like the guy in the yard, and because we were living in these like multi-story buildings, a guy in the yard who had a football ball, he was one of the most popular persons out there. I mean, because that was rare. And I never had one, but in the beginning I never had one. So then I acquired it at some point. I think I got it for my birthday or something. That was a big deal. But you'll see the same. You'll get the same story. So it's always outside. It's always like summer. It's swimming. It's getting lost somewhere in the woods nearby with a bike or something.
You're
And
figuring
then
it
in the
out.
winter, figuring it out, and then in the winter it's always minus 25, minus 30 Celsius.
Then you're inside.
Uh, you're no, you're not. This
Oh,
is the
you're not.
point, and
Okay, you're
it's yeah,
outside
no,
still.
it's half. It's waist deep in snow, and I'm not kidding. I mean, it's waist deep in snow, and you are somewhere on the top of like the hill, the highest hill in your area, with a uh, pretty much like a plastic bag or whatever, just whatever slides
Yeah,
on snow, and then on that plastic bag you try to like you descend the hill, and then you go up again, and
I
then you
love that.
descend again, and you yeah, I mean you're beaten up
Yeah.
as hell at the end of the day, but it was fun. Retrospectively, like this was honestly the best childhood one can get. And it was absolutely without gadgets. It was tons of whenever you wanted to entertain yourself, you read a book, right? It was only books, and I've pretty much read through all the well, most of the library, the town library that we had when I was a kid. So it was great. It was great.
I love that. And
Sometimes dodgy, but
yeah,
mostly
sometimes
great.
dodgy. Like there's some dodgy experiences in kind of woven in there. And so it sounds like you had a very kind of free-spirited childhood where you can, and very independent, and you had to be independent pretty quickly. And you mentioned that you were crushing books at the library, and you're focusing on sports, you're focusing on education. Take us to when you're thinking about going to university. Like, did you know what you wanted to study? Did you know which university like was in your sights? How are you thinking about that?
I think retrospectively, one of the things, one of the limitations whenever you live in a small town or and you don't really leave it, and it's not that nowadays, kids have the access to internet and they basically have the whole world at their fingertips, right? Um, Back in the days, it was not like that. So one of the cons of living in a small town is really thinking that the world is a huge place, and not really acknowledging all the opportunities that are there. And the reason I'm telling this is that uh, for my BA, I never really thought of going abroad. It was not even on the radar, just because it was incomprehensible for me. It was, that was a thought that had no room
Yep.
in my head, because it sounded like something impossible to accomplish, like absolutely impossible to, like, going to the moon and back, pretty much. The low hanging fruit was to get into the university, get admitted into the university as fast as possible. And I really, retrospectively again, I really wanted to study medicine. So I really wanted to become an MD, and specifically I wanted to become a neurosurgeon. Um, it so happened that I was not the brightest star in chemistry and physics at school. For the reasons which I understand. I mean, I didn't really have much sync with the specific teachers that we had, and like and these subjects, the way they were taught, I guess, was just not syncing. It's not that they were taught badly or something; it was just not syncing with the way I process information, right? So I was not the brightest star there, which got me thinking in an absolutely false way. That was like a huge cognitive mistake and bias that I had, that I was not good at those, and I could not be, a doctor. I could not get into a medical college or anything. So my second kind of favorite interest was international relations, international affairs, and politics. I was always digging into the history books and whatnot. So
You're doing
I got
diplomacy
into,
when you were younger already. Like,
and I was forced
yeah,
into
yeah,
diplomacy.
yeah.
Look, I
You
mean,
were a pro by the time you got into college.
whenever you have like getting your ass badly kicked on the line, like that makes you the best diplomat out there. I'm telling you, even if you're 10 years old, that's even worse.
You're
In my case, I was actually, like, I was the smallest kid. I was the smallest kid because I was 2 years younger than everyone in my age group and in my grade, because I started earlier and I jumped through one grade.
yeah.
So like the age gap was there already, and I was physically like the smallest one proportion wise. So I was a diplomat for sure. I mean, I couldn't have survived
Yeah.
without that. So yeah, I mean, I went to I scouted for the university programs that were doing this, and I ended up with what is here in Riga, it's called Riga Stradiņš University, one of the most well-known international relations programs here in the Baltics. It was called International Relations and European Studies. And I basically so I started my 12th grade. So I finished my 11th year at school. Well, technically 10th, but number 11 chronologically. And then I started my 12th grade. And the way that the university wanted us to do it is every Saturday, they wanted us to get into the prep course. And then in January, so half a year later, they wanted us to take an enrollment exam. And so every Saturday, I woke up at 2 a.m. Yeah, 2 a.m. at night. I walked to the bus station in my hometown. So I took an overnight bus to Riga, which was like 4.5 to 5 hours for the bus. It was a pretty slow thing, I must admit. So I took that. I was in Riga like by 8 a.m. ish, and then I went to the university, sat through this prep course for the whole day, and then in the evening I took the very same bus and I went back. So I basically spent every Saturday for half a year till January, since September to, well, not technically half a year, but like the whole semester from September to January, until I was able to take the enrollment exam, and I got admitted. So technically by the mid 12th grade, I already had my my university spot reserved for me, and I just needed to complete the state exams, so the high school exams, and that everyone is doing, and that was it. So by the time I graduated, I had this already done, and reserved.
Interesting. So now that you're at university, talk about what was that experience like for you?
a lot of homesickness
Oh,
to
okay.
begin with. I do because again, I mean, you grew up in a place which has like, 4,000 people, maybe four and a half at best, right? And then Riga, which is technically by a lot of standards a village as well, and it's like 700,000 people here, which is not a lot. It's like a mid American town or like a small city, whatever, even not even a city. So it felt huge, felt absolutely huge. I was commuting every morning, again 1.5 hours, waking up God knows at what time. I honestly, like, remembering it now, I do not sincerely know how I survived this whole ordeal. I wouldn't be able to repeat it.
Yeah.
No joke, I wouldn't be able to repeat it. Like I would literally die if I was to repeat it now.
Yeah, yeah.
Like stuff, a heart attack or a stroke somewhere in the middle of it, and that would be it. And that was it. The workload was super intense. Like they made us read through abysmal amount of material. They made us write an abysmal amount of essays, summaries, analysis reports, whatever. The way that workload was structured at the university in my bachelor's, especially for the first, so the bachelor's was 3 years, three. And the way it was structured is that if you basically get into some sort of debt with submitting your assignments, it was impossible to get out of this
Oh
debt.
no.
Like so like whenever it started to snowball, you're pretty much 95% chance you're done.
Oh no.
I was trying to keep up. I was sleeping on average 3 hours, 4 hours. 4 hours was a good night, and this is how I lived for the first year.
Oof.
At the same time, I don't know how. At the same time, I managed to go visit my mom. And I didn't have a driving license because I was 17, and you're not supposed to have one in Europe. So I used to go visit my mom, with a bus again. So I used to visit my hometown pretty often. I at some point I even completed my driving exam while doing the first year's coursework. I do not know how. I literally do not. But fact is a fact. I got my driving license. And I was always really into cars and everything that moves. So getting a driving license at the very point when I got 18 years old, which is in January, was like a must have. That was like an honor thing for me to do. So
Game changer.
it could have, it was absolutely not an option to wait and like wait for the summer or something. I was like, January, we're going for it. If I die, I die.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the first, and then I think in the third year it got a bit less intense. And I was able to, yeah, I was able to do some side hustles. I was able to kind of buy my first car through side hustles, and this is where the whole thing, I think, evenized for a slight moment.
Could you talk about the side hustle? How, like, what side hustle?
I would either translate something, so I would do translation work, for written translation work for payment,
Cool.
for profit.
And
Or I would
you're
do
coaching tennis too?
sometimes I would do tennis lessons. Yeah. I would have either like a
How are you
small group of
sleeping at all?
kids. Yeah, I mean, by like year and a half, it got easier.
Yeah.
It got easier. First year was a freaking nightmare. I was barely making it. But then it got a bit easier. Like I think it's either one third or like almost half of my group left in
Mm,
the first semester,
wow.
really, in the first half a year. So like the dropout rate was absolutely horrendous. Yeah, and then it got easier. We got into the part where we were supposed to get internships. I went on to intern at the parliament. And so it was much more, trying to interact with the outer world, versus just sitting reading books and writing stuff 24/7.
Cool. I guess before talking about the internship, were there any like professors that kind of took you under their wing, or is this just like on your own? You gotta figure it out.
I was figuring it out. I think I was figuring it out. One of the reasons why I was figuring it out because I was fairly like introverted as a kid. I had quite a lot of struggle historically with socializing, really, with people, understanding the I wouldn't say understanding, well, understanding the emotions of people to a certain extent, but also understanding the social constructs which would require you to do something or would prohibit you to do something. And the best example of it is whenever you're having a conversation with a person, there are a lot of things that you do naturally, right? You sometimes smile naturally, you laugh, you do a certain gesture, or your facial expressions tell something, and you do it without thinking about it, right? So it's just your standard operating procedures, SOPs, we call them. It didn't really happen with me, so I was struggling with these things that were self-evident to a lot of kids, and so I was, part of stuff and whatever was also teaching myself how to go through these social situations and how to interact with people to begin with, and how to blend in. And so the university part, I guess, continued for me in a certain way as well, because in the university you finally encounter smart people.
Yeah.
I'm not being arrogant, right? But in school, you're basically locked in the same room with random folks. Some of them are very bright, some of them are not the sharpest tools in the shed, and you're just there,
Yeah.
right? It's like being in a cell, pretty much. Like where if you are lucky with your cell, and you are there for like 11, 12 years sentenced, right? So if you're lucky with your cellmates, it's not that dramatic. You might
Super
actually
fun.
no, but seriously, think about it. So it's mandatory,
Yeah.
right? And you're locked with these people. So at the university, I did have my kind of, and some of the guys that I've went to school with were absolutely tremendous and very bright. But with some, I had reasonable problems with understanding, how they live their life. But whatever. The point is, at the university, I had my renaissance moment in terms of, well, that's really interesting. Like everything here is merit based, right? Everyone got here because of passing, some sort of testing or some sort of evaluation. So they actually, it's not about the evaluation per se, but about the effort that they took to actually get here. So no random people or seemingly random people.
Yep.
It was great in that way, but I was still pretty much on my own. I would say we had a lot of great professors actually. One of my professors that that was supervising my thesis, my bachelor's thesis back in the days, is actually now the defense minister of Latvia.
Oh shit.
But no, we still keep like a good friendly relationship, and
Cool.
send like birthday wishes to each one when the time comes. So we had good professionals working with us.
Cool.
Most of the studies were in English as well, so that definitely helped. I wouldn't say like a certain person influenced me or something like that, but yeah, I think the bottom line is everyone was helpful, and school, you see, is very uneven in terms of um, rewarding the willingness of kids to learn. Some teachers do reward it. Some teachers just don't give a damn. And teacher is the sort of profession that is honestly like it should be like a God's gift type of situation, because otherwise it doesn't work. And the same with doctors. Like a good doctor is the doctor that really thinks that this is his or her calling, because only this actually justifies all the, fucked upness, I do apologize, of how you become a doctor,
Yeah.
right? Like all the education and all these nights in front of the books and whatever. At the university, I think the attitude was even, and that was something that stood out for me. Like every single teacher we had actually cared about the subject and
Cool.
actually cared about teaching us something. And international relations, it's a lot about politics. It's about negotiation tactics. It's about kind of understanding the societal context. It's a lot of behavioral economics, interestingly enough,
Cool.
because it also kind of moves the masses to a certain degree, right? So all that stuff was super useful.
Interesting. And so now you have this internship opportunity at Parliament. Talk a little bit about that.
I got into it. I went through through a process of getting it. I thought that it would be a great experience for me. I was wrong.
Oh no. Oh no.
I had a very glorified and somewhat romanticized version of how state institutions actually work, right? And how Parliament as the major legislative body, and Latvia is a parliamentary republic, right? So it's not a presidential republic; it's a parliamentary republic. We do have a president, but president does not have legislative power, right? So it's more of a symbolic. Well, it does have some executive powers, but it's not a standalone figure per se. So the parliament is the main one, and I was just disappointed. That was it. I was disappointed. I thought that I would see something, like I would see history in the making. And I just saw a bunch of dudes sitting there, not doing their best job very, very often, right? Being lazy very often. And in my 18-year-old, back in the days, second year of university, 18 years old, 18-year-old idealistic mind, that was not the way of how you're elected by people, you're shaping the future of the country, you're working on legislation. Like in my mind, it just didn't add up at all. And and I spent half a year. It was good experience because I got to see how the decisions are taken, how the laws are actually prepared and moved through the whole, consultation mechanism, and then through all the commissions into an actual vote, et cetera, et cetera. So like process wise, it was extremely helpful, but ideologically, I was very disappointed. And I really did not think that coming in, I'd really want to work in the governmental apparatus type of thing. Coming out of it, the only thing I was sure about was that I don't want to work in government. Like this is like literally not for me. The hierarchy did not make sense. The reason why this person has the authority over this person, where this lower standing person is seemingly much more competent and much more sane, for God's sake, than this one, didn't make any sense. Like so for me as a kid back in the days, who was trying to get through everything, including social interactions, with reasoning.
Yeah.
Right. Like you do this because this and this, right? It was absolutely abysmal for me. It was illogical, and I didn't want to be in it. It was just not my pond.
Sometimes it's
And
important
this,
to figure that out though. Like, and figure it out early.
absolutely, and this is why it was tremendously helpful. This is what like for me since then, and even now, even more for me. Politics in general and any sort of political representation or assuming the responsibility of political representation of a certain part of the population, which in parliamentary republic you do, right? So you assume political representation of a certain group of people that elected you in the freaking parliament. For me, it is only acceptable as a part of societal added value that an accomplished individual actually assumes once this individual, he or she, whoever that is, has accomplished a lot in his or her own profession. So politics as employment, right, is a no-go for me on all sorts of levels. So I really think looking at this, I really became what you would call a technocrat, right? So I'm somewhere between like technocracy and meritocracy in my political beliefs, where I think that you need specialized people for specialized areas, like you need the guy with finance like a lot of finance background to run your economical pillar in the country.
Makes sense.
You don't need a former teacher to do it, right? Or a marketing guy who just went into politics for some reason. And you need to do this by merit, where it should be an accomplished individual. Like he or she should have a track record that proves that you can now rule or like be responsible for this part of affairs in the country. Otherwise, it's you're risking creating a circus. And I still think that way, right? So I still think that the politician is someone who just wants to give back to society, not earn money with it. It is a very unpopular opinion. It's a popular opinion. It's not a very popular execution.
Totally.
Strategy. So, but yeah, on paper, a lot of people would agree with me, though.
Yeah, and that's crazy that you got that, like, get the firsthand experience so early on, and so now you basically just, it's like almost like that Simpsons meme where like just go into the room and you're like, nope, I'm out. Turn right back out.
So sort of, yeah.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, I peace out. I'm not sticking around. Is that when
Peace
you
out.
started thinking about grad school or you're getting your master's?
Yeah, so this is where I went into my year 3, so the final year of BA, and I wanted to pursue further education. I wanted to go into master's straight away, and I was basically I just turned 20 years old, and I didn't really have. This is where I started to think about going abroad. I still didn't really have the financial means, and my family did not have much financial means to, send me whatever to Stanford or something. Even theoretically, if I would be able to get into it, right, I wouldn't be able to afford the fees. So, well, this is where I started to sample the field, right? I needed something with a scholarship, and something that would teach me what I wanted to dig deeper into, and that was political economy, and quantitative methods of statistics, pretty much. And I did end up applying to only one school, which was the Central European University in Budapest, which was founded and funded back in the days by the Soros Foundation, because Soros happened to be a Hungarian citizen. Well, Hungarian by ethnicity. I don't know if he's a citizen, but he's Hungarian ethnically. So he opened up, like, he funded the university, a very pro-liberal kind of institution, in Budapest, against all odds, because everything in Hungary, including the Orban government, was pretty much pushing the very contrary agenda to this very liberal type of agenda that the Central European University had. So, and I got accepted, and this is where I spent 2 years in Budapest for my master's. Again, a level up in terms of clever people around you. It was great. I honestly enjoyed it. Again, it was not like the wealthiest or whatever period of your life, but like, retrospectively, it was also one of the happiest ones. Both BA and MA just because you got to you got to live the life. You got to travel Europe. You got to travel somewhere. You got to travel to Vienna on a weekend. On a train, see places. Just to live the life, and you got to interact with NYU. So we got half of our staff coming in from US. So it was very academic, right? So it was a very academically inclined institution. It was not an MBA type of course, an MBA type of program, but it was nevertheless very high level, and I did enjoy that. And yeah, I think CEU is one of the coolest experiences from kind of the early education part of me.
Very cool. I loved your analogy of like your cellmates. You got some cool cellmates.
Oh yeah, you constantly got an upgrade to your cellmates.
Yeah.
At some point, your cellmates are there voluntarily. This is the coolest part. Like they actually paid for it, or they actually enrolled to be there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that makes a huge freaking difference. And yeah, so by MA, the cellmates were like absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, totally.
Being among people that are interested in the same thing, but slightly different area of that same thing, it brings the difference in perspectives. It brings a tremendous color in terms of the cultures that are mixed as well, because CEU had students from all over, starting from the African countries, ending up with US, Europe, Asia, whatever. And it was tremendously useful in terms of getting this notion of world being a very diverse place. It's actually a very small place, really. The world it's not big in reality, but it's very diverse, and how all these diverse cultures kind of co-live together, and how they approach studies even differently. That was tremendous. And that helped a lot, by the way, as I went on and did whatever I did in life. That background has helped a lot.
I love that.
That's all for this episode of the Biotech Startups podcast featuring Sergey Jakimov. Join us next time for part 2 of our 4-part series, where Sergey takes us from student life in Budapest to his first startup, a small CFD modelling venture breaking into the oil and gas industry. He shares what it was like to build a company at 22 with no experience, no safety net, and everything to learn. We'll also hear how that experience led him toward medical devices, why he sees team building like planning a bank heist, and how curiosity and respect for education became his real advantages. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Thanks for listening, and see you next time. The Biotech Startups podcast is produced by Exceeda. Don't want to miss an episode? Search for the Biotech Startups podcast wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. Exceeda provides research labs with equipment leases on founder-friendly terms to support paths to exceptional outcomes. To learn more, visit our website www.exceedr.com. On behalf of the team here at Exceeda, thanks for listening. The Biotech Startups podcast provides general insights into the life science sector through the experiences of its guests. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from the podcast is at the user's own risk. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not the views of Exceeda or sponsors. No reference to any product, service, or company in the podcast is an endorsement by Exceeda or its guests.